begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today is the planning board meeting for Whitman. It is October, what's my calendar, 22nd. We are being recorded for Whitman Public Access and YouTube. First on, might as well start with John Goldrosen is here. First in attendance tonight is myself, Adam Somerville, chair.
Bob Kimball, clerk.
Elaine Bertrand, co-chair.
Wayne Andrews, member.
We'll start with you. We have John Goldrosen from the zoning board.
All right, let me printed out something from a webinar I participated in. This is all about.
Thank you, John.
I didn't know the official name of it.
Yeah, it's,
The Affordable Homes Act Accessory Dwellings Unit.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
so, state's done it again. I don't know how many of you are aware of this. As part of, they had this Affordable Homes Act, most of that involved just appropriating money. But they made some changes to the state zoning law involving accessory dwelling units, which are defined on the second page of what I gave you. Basically what this new law will do is turn every single family lot into a two-family lot, because you can have a second unit by right, does not have to be rented to a family member, does not even have to be an owner-occupied property. So if, somebody has a rental property, a single family, single dwelling unit rental property, they can add a second unit. And this is not, unlike the MBTA Communities Act, this doesn't involve or require any local action to put it into effect. It just kind of overrides local zoning bylaws. So, and it will take effect in early February of 2025. But the reason here is there is some margin or some room within what the state has done to allow some degree of local regulation by amending the local zoning bylaw. And so I think we should be moving to do that. Two things in particular that I see. First of all, these ADUs, accessory dwelling units, will be allowed under the state law by right. But towns, if they put it in their zoning bylaw, towns can require site plan review. So, currently we have in Whitman an accessory dwelling unit bylaw, but it's owner-occupied property, family member, and it requires a special permit. If we still can have site plan review, then at least there's a public hearing, notice to abutters. We find on the zoning board, even on projects where we only allowed to have site plan review, we can put some degree of pressure to require some changes, and this at least allows a neighbor to come in and say, hey, we put the window on the other side of the building, whatever. That's one thing that we could do, but we have to take the initiative to do it in the zoning bylaw. And the other thing I'm really concerned about with the state law is since it allows it to be this second unit to be either within the building or in an accessory building. Well, under our zoning bylaw, accessory buildings can be, I didn't look it up, 10 feet from the property line, because we're anticipating garages and sheds and things like this. So you could have an accessory dwelling unit that's 10 feet from a property line. But the state law says we can have reasonable regulations about dimensional requirements and so forth. So I would anticipate coming up with something that says the accessory dwelling unit must meet the same setback requirements as the principal dwelling unit. So closer to the property line than whatever the setback is. And there may be some other things to look at. There's still some degree of uncertainty about the state law because it left it to the new Department of Housing and Livable Communities, I guess is what it's called now, to come up with guidelines and regulations, because they haven't done anything yet. And what they do might help clarify things or might push the envelope even further, which is what happened with the Everyday Communities Act. But for instance, there is a provision in the state law that says you can have a second accessory dwelling unit on the property, but that would be by special permit. So that would give us more control over that. We'd want to have provisions for that. So I'm just coming before you to kind of introduce this. Oh, and the other important thing is about timing. So yeah, obviously, whatever we propose, we go to town meeting in May. This law takes effect in February. So between February and May, people could be rushing in and building these things. But under the zoning act for amendments, as long as the first notice of a public hearing is published before, once you publish the notice for a public hearing on the zoning bylaw, that kind of freezes the zoning in place. If you want to come in for a building permit under you can do so, but you do it at your own risk, because if town meeting approves that zoning bylaw amendment, it goes back to the date of the first published notice. So that would mean if we can at least publish a notice for a public hearing in, say, January,
Yeah.
if we don't hold the hearing until later, that would at least freeze it until we get to town meeting. So that's why we need to be thinking about working on this now. I mean, that's, you know, I can go into more detail, but that's the broad strokes of what this does. But to emphasize again, unlike the MBTA Communities Act, I mean, they kind of, you know, learned their lesson from that experience. This time they wrote the law in a way that it just kind of overrides local zoning and there's nothing required. If we do nothing, this goes into effect anyway, but with no site plan review, with no setback requirements, other than what's in there for accessory buildings and, you know, some other provisions, so.
The town cannot make anything more restrictive than what the new one is, right?
No, I mean, other than, they sort of, they use the word reasonable regulations as to bulk and density, which is sort of like what applies to colleges and other kind of exempt uses.
No, we couldn't say it has to be at least 10 feet or more.
Well, I think we can. See, that's the way I interpret it, because the state doesn't say anything about what the setback should be. But if we don't do anything, then the state is saying you can put it in an accessory building. So since we allow accessory buildings to be 10 feet from a property line, because we haven't anticipated this, then if we do nothing, that would be the rule. But if we're, you know, as long as our regulation is reasonable, and I think it would be reasonable to say you gotta be as far away from the property line as any other dwelling on the property, I think that's reasonable. And, you know, subject to see what the state guidelines and regulations are, what people do, and I'll you know, this what I handed out to you is from a webinar that the Municipal Lawyers Association held. I'm still a member of that, so I'm still, you know, when somebody puts something on their listserv, I see it, so I'll be staying on top of what other towns do too. And obviously, whatever we draft goes to town council to review, and he's, you know, aware of all this too. But yeah, if we do nothing, we're worse off than if we do something.
Makes sense.
Down to.
Am I reading this right though? Is it only applies for buildings within half a mile of the commuter rail?
No.
No, okay, I thought that's said here.
Yeah, there's a provision about how much parking you can require.
Right.
And I think it says you can require one parking space for an accessory dwelling unit, which is kind of what we do anyway.
Right.
Assuming it's one bedroom, I mean, and the state does have a limit of 900 square feet.
Yeah.
A
Could be
maximum, a minimum.
maximum.
Depends on the square footage of
Yeah,
the
I mean,
existing
it
house.
could be a 2-bedroom unit, you know.
Maximum 900 square feet,
Yeah.
less if principal dwelling is under 1,800 square
Yeah,
feet.
yeah, then.
But when I was reading this here, it says the accessory dwelling unit of the principal dwelling, provided that not more than one additional parking space shall be required for an accessory dwelling
Right, so we
unit. Provided
can't-
further, no additional parking space shall be required for an accessory.
Yeah.
Oh, so if it's closer than half a
Yeah, if it's
mile,
close
you
to
don't need a
the
parking
train
spot.
station, we cannot require a parking,
Okay.
additional parking space.
I thought, I read it wrong, but I still,
Yeah.
similar to what I
Yeah.
thought.
And if it's more than that, we can only require one
One,
parking
as I
space.
go.
We can't do it one per
So
bedroom.
basically, it could be 10, they could just throw a 10 by 10 shed.
Yeah, and there are, I saw a news
Or 10 by
report
9.
yesterday, like Walmart or Amazon or somebody is selling these tiny houses, which are basically, you know, like the size of a mobile home. Just buy it, plop it in your light. Obviously, you gotta connect utilities and do all that. But, that's coming,
Yeah.
you know, that's gonna be
But
happening.
the other ones now, you can order blocks online, basically big Legos, and just put a house together. Seriously.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's just, they just
Yeah.
connect together, like glue them
So-
together.
yeah, so I don't have much say so in physical appearance of it.
Right?
But,
There's a lot of sheds out there that people would convert if we don't do something.
yeah, yeah.
That's how I look
And
at
just, you know, plopping a second floor. Again, we recently, within the last year or two, amended our accessory dwelling bylaw to allow people to put a unit above a garage, a freestanding garage. Fine, but what you would see with this is a lot of people who just have an ordinary garage will add a second story
Yeah.
and put a unit in there, as long as, again, they gotta have water and sewer and so forth.
Yeah. And this doesn't have to be an in-law either. They
No,
can be rental,
absolutely.
straight out rental instead. But
Straight out rental.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
John, I noticed on the question section, which is the last page, they wrote condominiums allowed. Do you remember what they said about condominiums?
Oh, did I give you, which, maybe, I'm sorry, I think I gave you my copy, which.
Oh, I don't see that, Lee.
Let me just take a look at it. I gave you like 4 pages out of 10. But this is, the attorney who was presenting this was kind of raising some additional questions. Yeah, one of the questions he raised was, what about a condominium? Can they
Yeah.
have accessory
Yeah.
dwellings? Who knows, you know? But I think the state will have to clarify that, because the condominium association owns the common space. you
Right.
know. But what if you want to put a second unit in your condominium unit?
No,
Turn your garage.
our lawyer says that the way that they read this is a possibility that somebody can convert their garage into a living space.
Okay.
Rent it out.
Yeah,
But-
unless your association bylaws create control of
Yeah.
it. But we couldn't prevent that as a town.
Could even a condo association prevent it? I wonder.
If their bylaws
Stated beforehand.
may say something
Yeah.
about that.
We might as well just
Well,
take our bylaws about in-law.
We like South Korea's.
And make it void, and take it off the book,
there's no notes on it or anything.
you know? Because they don't have to.
But on the first page, on this first page, it talks about how it has to be in single-family residential zoning. So if a condo is in mixed zoning, it would
Yeah.
qualify.
Yeah, and that question was raised in this webinar. If you have a zoning district that forbids residential structures, fine, that's clearly not a single family.
Right.
But a lot of, even some of ours that are principally business still allow, I mean, we prohibit residential in what, the industrial zone?
Mhm.
But in the commercial zone,
Well, light
Mixed
industrial,
use instead we have now.
Light industrial, we have right on Auburn Street next to
I just
Auburn
say-
Way.
well, some of those, maybe, let me just see. But, in a lot of towns, residential is allowed anywhere, even in business and industrial zones. So is
is a single-family residential district only like our residential, A and B? Or is it any district where houses are allowed?
Well, that,
Houses allowed by right.
Yeah, well, maybe, or by special permit. That's the kind of thing the state's gonna have to clarify. Okay, so we only allow it in A1, A2, and general residence. We don't allow detached dwellings in highway business or industrial or general business.
But you still have a lot of them.
Yeah. I'm just looking to see if.
do you want the new condos?
Yeah, so we're at least protected that way, but in some towns, that could be a problem.
Right?
Now, John, if we provide a notice of a public hearing, at the time of the notice of the public hearing, do we need to have a pretty close draft of what it is or not?
Yeah, we need to, because when you provide that notice, you gotta say copies of the bylaw are available.
Potential bylaw.
So I'm looking, we need to have a bylaw drafted by January, basically. And I'm prepared to take a stab at it and then run it by town council and wait, and I can see what,
That would be great.
what other towns do. One thing I anticipate is we might as well just rescind our existing accessory dwelling unit bylaw and just incorporate whatever we can into that, because otherwise you just get a bit confusing.
Right.
We already had one application for a special permit for an accessory unit a few weeks ago. And, we were hemming and hawing about the appearance, and then we're thinking, in 6 months, this guy's gonna be able to do this. That's kind of work, and I think there was some, I know what it was. It was gonna wind up being a freestanding building because it just, it was on a slope. It didn't make sense to make him have stairs for an 87-year-old woman.
Yeah.
So that meant we had to give him like a variance from the side setback or something like that. That was it,
Yeah.
But we're sitting there thinking, in 6 months he wouldn't, if we turned him down, what would be the point,
Is there anything we have to do now? We're having a motion to go to the town,
Well, I don't think so. I just kind of wanted to say how do we work together on this, I'm prepared to, just think in terms of timing, your board schedule and all. If I shoot to draft something in the next month, say by the end of November, so we could.
How long would the bylaw study committee need? They'll have to go through
Yeah,
it first,
so
right?
what's the procedure? You tell me the procedure on your end.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm not 100%
So-
sure.
Because you're gonna have to go to the selectmen and get them to
So,
refer it back to you.
so someone would submit it to us. We then submit it to the selectmen,
Yeah,
then they send it back to us,
yeah,
then we schedule the
Sure.
hearings.
yeah.
Do we send it to the bylaw study committee or the selectmen?
I,
Unless
It
you're not
depends
100%
The
on the
bylaw
procedure.
study committee doesn't stand in the way of you moving forward, I
Okay.
don't think, right?
No.
no.
Okay.
It's not part of the state zoning act.
No.
That's
Goes to the
it.
selectmen, they send it to the attorneys, then it comes back to us.
Okay.
Yeah,
Then we do a hearing, I believe.
yeah, we have to do the public hearings and then,
I just want to make sure, that's all.
Yeah.
And I believe the zoning board study committee on the last zoning change had it on their meeting after the public hearing.
Okay, so we won't worry about that.
Yeah.
As long as we go to the selectmen in December, then we can put the hearing out,
And-
the notice in January.
You may remember this from the last one, I didn't look it up. When you publish the notice of public hearing,
Mhm.
you can hold the public hearing a month later, 2 months later, right? I don't think.
That's
I
30
can-
days.
Do it in 30
I can
days.
look up, if you give me just a minute, I can
Yeah,
look up
yeah.
I
the,
think there is
there are
There's
requirements,
a
but,
requirement that the town meeting has to act within a certain period of the public hearing.
but I don't think.
I thought we had to have the hearing within 30 days of publishing.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, so I'll let them listen to
Yeah.
that one.
That's how I had to get up the computers fast.
So as far as keeping some of the existing things that the appeals board looks at, if they're converting single family into two-family, they're still gonna have to have separate utilities and all that stuff.
Well, that's a good question.
That's a question.
If you can have a second unit by right, what does that do to our requirement for a special permit to convert a one-family house into a two-family house and only in certain districts?
Well, I was wondering if you already had a standing in-law, could you still put one of these on?
I would think if you've already got a special permit from us for an in-law, I think you can now rent it out to anybody by right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Convert that to a two-family, except then you run into the utilities.
well, but it's unclear to me whether the requirement for separate utilities is really a zoning issue, a building code issue, if there even is a requirement for
Right.
separate
You
utilities.
could just run an extension cord to hose,
Yeah.
technically. I'm just don't, just saying,
I mean, we've taken the position that with our existing accessory dwelling units, that they have to be on the same utilities, because we're still seeing that as a single family
Right.
house. Under this, I don't know.
Now,
To see how they might word it.
if it becomes a two-family house, now it's taxed a little bit differently than a single family with an in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah, how these will be taxed is kind of outside our
Yeah, perfect.
concern, but as far as I'm concerned, it's the second unit. I mean, it's
Yeah. Melissa, what did you find?
So the public hearing would have to be within 65 days of
Okay.
the first published notice.
okay. So we publish a notice,
It was halfway there.
January,
That's the same.
we need to hold the public hearing in
March.
March.
Mhm.
And then the town meeting has to act, but I think that's within six months.
No, it doesn't, so it just says date on which town meeting voted, because it's like a form that you have to fill in the dates. Date on which town meeting voted on the proposed amendment where the planning board has, no, it doesn't, there's no requirement for that. It just says that if within 30 days of the hearing, if the planning board doesn't submit a recommendation, they can just like vote on whatever they want.
But there's some provision that either the public hearing or the planning board recommendation gets stale if town meeting doesn't.
You had that
Yeah.
certain amount of time to get on the warrant.
Yeah.
right?
I think
For
it's
the
like
town meeting.
six months.
You have to have a certain amount of time before you have to get on the warrant, but you
Well,
have to
yeah,
hear to
we
get
got
on the
to,
warrant.
work backwards. to
Yeah,
the warrant
yeah.
Anyway, but
Yeah, the town meeting may not vote to adopt the proposed amendments unless it's at least 21 days after the public hearing. So it gives the planning board 21 days to do what they need to do, but if they
Right.
don't, then town meeting can vote on it anyway.
Okay.
But anyway, you're probably looking at public hearing in March or
March.
whatever, and that might depend on
Yeah, because,
when you need to get it to the selectmen to get it
Yeah.
warrant. But yeah, so we can publish it.
yeah, you can publish in January.
And you don't have to hold the hearing until February, March.
That works.
So if I come up with a draft by the end of November, what's the planning board's schedule in end of November? And in
November, we are the 12th and 26th, but that's when's Thanksgiving? That's the 4th,
28th.
28th, so usually we don't meet on that Tuesday, but we can if we need
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Or we could potentially
week
shift
before.
weeks or days if,
If
you
need
know.
be, we can go to the 12th and 19th if we have to.
Yeah, that would probably make the most sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 weeks in a row.
Well, I'll give myself the deadline, it's the 19th.
Yeah,
Because, how often is the selectmen meeting in December? you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
we may need to make
Um,
sure we're.
I-
After that,
we could-
December 10th.
I could touch base with our liaison too, to just kind of give them a
Yeah,
heads up
see-
that,
see when the
so
select-
that maybe so they know in the back of their heads that potentially we may be putting something in, so that meetings maybe could be scheduled around.
And when, like with the MBTA communities bylaw, did you have that drafted and take that to the selectmen? for them
Yeah.
to- Okay, so we need to be done with it.
Yeah.
at our
There
end
can
before we
still
do-
be
make
changes made,
Yeah,
but yes, but the
hold a public
bulk,
hearing and
yeah,
they decide to make changes.
yeah,
but
but the bulk of it needs to be.
Basically, we need to get it.
Did that get approved, by the way, the MBTA for us?
Yes,
The Attorney General approved it, now did.
they're
Housing-
submitting to, yeah, the, Justin and Kathy are doing that.
Yeah, so we're still waiting to hear from Housing and Livable Communities as to whether it meets
State.
their requirements for, you know, for what it should be. The Attorney General approved it, saying that, you know, doesn't look like it conflicts. You did all the right things procedurally, doesn't conflict with state law, but we still need Housing and Livable Communities to sign off on it, so we know that
Well, it's a
we're
good
not gonna
sign.
get sanctioned, you know.
I'm just glad it went through,
Yeah,
that's all. Yeah. We'll fight back
the
with it.
virtue of being there at 11 o'clock at night.
Hey.
Everyone wants to go home.
Still went through,
No, it went through.
that's all that matters.
No, we did the right thing. And,
Yeah.
I mean, Hanson's losing
Big
money
break.
now.
Out of land to begin with, that was the biggest thing.
Milton too, they're still suing. At least they were last I heard.
The what?
Milton
Milton.
was still going.
That would be for the.
Well, they're before the SJC.
Oh, that's where they are at now?
Yeah, they appealed the
Yeah,
validity of the
They
law,
did it a
so,
couple weeks ago.
yeah.
yeah. They don't hear anything till the end of the year.
The problem with Milton is they rejected it, but they didn't completely, they wanted to change the map, basically.
Well, at least some, you know, at least some people in town would be willing to go ahead with a different map, whether,
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, it isn't that we're not gonna do it type thing, as opposed to some towns that just saying, we're not doing it.
yeah, no, I mean, I think Milton made an effort at least.
They made an effort, they should be rewarded for the effort, I think.
Yeah.
That's politics.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I'll try to, put me on the agenda for the 19th, just push ahead.
Okay, we'll make a note of that, we'll change our meeting to the 19th.
Yep.
If by chance you're not ready, we won't have our
Yeah.
meeting on the 19th.
Yeah.
If you don't need to, we'll just cancel our things.
Because otherwise, your December meetings won't be till like
The 10th, and then we won't have one, so the next one will be the 24th,
Yeah.
so.
Why?
Yeah.
Why not?
You're not gonna meet the 24th?
Yeah, I'll
Potentially,
play with Santa.
potentially we could do like
I'm getting
the
gray enough.
10th and 17th,
You
You
again,
have
like
to get
the
done by
2 weeks.
midnight, because, you know, you're gonna be in bed,
That's
the
it.
Santa won't come.
You're gonna be giving out presents, I'll be here.
Only if you sit on my lap, Wayne.
Oh, my God.
Remember this is being.
I know, I was very distinguished with that. I didn't add any verbiage.
Okay, next item on the agenda.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Goldrosen.
John.
John, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
And just let me know if there's anything else you need
Okay.
in the process.
All right. So next is 305 Bedford Street, units 1 and 2. Highway business, structures existing, Sweezy Properties, 233 Bedford Street, Whitman, Mass. Not available when property was acquired. Application has been filed with the clerk, and yes, a previous appeal has been made, case number 8-2023. By section of bylaw which relief is requested, not available. Reason for asking relief, Berkeley Botanicals is seeking an amendment to its existing special permit, case number 8-2023, in order to add additional conditions based upon Berkeley Botanicals' amended host agreement. There are no other proposed changes to the existing special permit. The additional proposed conditions are attached to this application, which we did not get.
Yeah. So I might just as well I'm here.
Oh, sweet.
I might as well explain this. And, Bob-
thank you, John.
Bob and Wayne heard this last night.
So here's what's going on with, this is the most ready to go of the 3 marijuana establishments that were approved. They've actually built out their space, they're ready to roll. Well, so it's, under the law, they had to have a host community agreement with the selectmen, which they did, all 3 of them did. They signed the same form, and then all 3 came to us for special permits. When we issued our special permits, we didn't bother duplicating conditions that were in the host community agreement. Didn't need to, and I also didn't want a potential conflict between, if we impose a condition, the building inspector enforces it. If the selectmen impose a condition, the selectmen or the police or whoever. So rather than get into that kind of thing, we didn't cover everything that could possibly have been covered in our special permit. Well, now so the state again amended the marijuana law, gave Cannabis Control Commission control, or at least oversight over host community agreements, which they didn't really have before. And there were complaints by marijuana companies, establishments, that basically towns were kind of extorting, donations and all kinds of other things from them. So the legislature decided to let the state, the Cannabis Control Commission, review host community agreements and make sure they met various state requirements. Okay, so towns start submitting host community agreements to the CCC, and rather than looking at the host community agreement saying, oh, paragraph 5, that's inconsistent with this requirement of state law, what the commission did was first it drafted its own model host community agreement, which could make things easy for people if you want to just follow the model, fine. But what the state's now doing is they're looking at the town's host community agreement, and if it isn't the model agreement, they're rejecting the host community agreement, which, not just affects the town, but obviously affects the applicant, because the state won't issue the marijuana license unless you have a host community agreement in place. And the commission right now, doesn't have an executive director, doesn't have a chief attorney, doesn't have all kinds of people. You probably read in the paper, it's a mess. And when towns contacted, I know this from the other, the lawyers who handle this, when towns contacted the commission, say, well, what's wrong with our HCA? They literally, their phone calls weren't returned, their emails were not answered, it's silenced. So Berkeley came to the selectmen and said, what can we do here? And what then I met with the selectmen and with Mary Beth. And what we agreed to was the selectmen will enter into the model host community agreement with Berkeley and with the other applicants. And in return, Berkeley will come back to the ZBA and will amend the special permit to add conditions that would otherwise have been in the original host community agreement. And I actually have already drafted a set of conditions, ran it by Berkeley's attorney. He had no problems with it. So frankly, I'm anticipating a pretty quick hearing. Could be a surprise, but we're not reopening, we're not going to look at the site, and they're not proposing any changes to the physical layout of the building. They built it according to what we all previously approved.
Right.
They had the special permit and site plan approval before, and that's what they built up. And in fact, I told them, just submit the same plan you had before. So that's why they're coming back to us. I'm going to send out the conditions to the ZBA members before the meeting so they can review it, because at the meeting, if there are suggestions of changes, that's fine. But it's mainly just a lot of the kind of security things and making the point that the police and fire will, conditions change, they can review that. It's not anything all that significant. What the town will lose through this whole process is some of the financial things. We still get the 3% tax revenue, that's set. But I think there were some provisions for donations, or funding some kind of substance abuse program. And also, there was provision that that at least the 3 marijuana establishments would pick up the tab for the money spent for the town attorney to negotiate all these things. Well, that's gonna go by the wayside, and we can't do anything about that
Right.
with the zoning board. So anyway, that's why they're coming back to us. And in the meantime, the selectmen already approved entering into the new host community agreement once they, applied to us for the permit. But I'm expecting things to go fairly routinely before the zoning board.
Alright. That's easy. Somebody can make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we recommend favorable action on the application to the zoning.
We have a second? Alright, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Brandon's not here, he abstains. Alright, that was easy.
Can we get a copy of what you proposed,
Yeah,
just for the knowledge?
yeah.
Still gonna boot anyway once it becomes federally legal, right? Would that change a lot eventually?
You still gotta see some,
Yeah.
legal, they're probably gonna leave room for states to regulate it to some degree.
Yeah. That's a big if anyway.
That
so-
remains to be seen if
Yeah.
that happens.
Well, thank you, my lady.
Thank you very much.
Alright, we have lots of left of the minutes, unless we have any mail. No mail?
There's no mail, but I do have an email that I just wanted to read to everyone. I did respond to the resident, but just want to let everyone know. So this morning, I got an email from Ann McDonough. She said, "Good morning. I'm inquiring on a building on Bedford Street in Whitman. I believe it used to be the Jamie's Restaurant back in the day. I have lived in Whitman for 3 years now, and every time I drive by, the building looks worse and worse. It is such an eyesore. I believe whoever owns it should at least maintain/clean along with a bit of landscaping. I was driving through Quincy yesterday and I couldn't believe how amazing it looked. There are flowers at every light and intersection. I would love to help to be part of a Whitman beautification. It would be really nice to see. Thank you. Please hold businesses accountable to maintain their properties. Thank you, Ann McDonough." So I did respond to her and let her know that I did forward her email along to the zoning board and to the building department, just so that everyone knows. I was just sharing her, because,
Send it to the town.
just so that everyone is on the same page that a resident had this concern.
And that, of course, is, the Jamie building is one of the sites approved for
Yep.
marijuana establishment.
And when I was driving by this weekend, my wife noted that it looks like
It's a mess,
it's getting bad.
yeah,
And,
but they're not.
Which I did think it was very nice that she did also say that she would be willing to volunteer to help with things in the town, which is always nice when someone volunteers to help, not just bring up issues.
But don't they have the same holdup that,
Well, they got, the other 2 establishments aren't this anywhere far as long. I mean, 356 South Ave started doing work in the interior of the building. It seems to have stopped as near as I can see every time I walk by it. And Jamie's, they were gonna knock that building down and tear one building up, so who knows if they're gonna go. I mean, the host community agreement will not be an issue because the selectmen will give them the same deal and they'll have to come back to it. At this point, it's more the financial, whether they even want to go ahead with those establishments.
true,
I have my doubts.
on both of them?
Yeah.
oh yeah, no, definitely.
So the only other order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from October 8th.
I make a motion to approve the October 8th, 2024.
You got a second?
Second,
Second by Bob. All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Brendan abstains?
You won't get us abstain because he's not here.
Yeah.
They absent. And that is all that we have.